What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash podcast, your number one resource for all that is happening across the emerging tech space. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. Today, I'm joined by another special guest, Srini, CTO of Shardeum, an EVM-based autoscaling blockchain, here to talk about what autoscaling is, how they are tackling the blockchain trilemma, and all the other features that make them unique. So, Srini, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you here. How you doing?
Good. I'm very happy to be here, Brandon. Thank you.
Likewise. To get things kicked off, I'm sure people would love to get to know you a little bit more in terms of your backgrounds. What is your story? What has your story kind of been like? How did you end up in this wonderful world of Web3?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting serendipitous path I took to Web3. I've been in the tech industry for a while. I was, before I jumped into Web3, I was the CTO for a publicly traded healthcare company. I built electronic health record systems for both doctors and dentists. And and along the way, I somehow, we were trying to figure out how to make um, that service free for users, for doctors and patients. And that's how I stumbled onto blockchain. And so it's been like a very interesting ride since then. So in 2016, I set up my first NFT marketplace. I was playing around with it, and this was, even before the ERC 721 standard was even a standard. But it was, once I had that up and running, I was completely hooked. I couldn't get back. It was like I just fell in love with the whole process, and the space. It's a blockchain itself is a very interesting technology. I'm really, more than the applications of blockchain and the cryptocurrency that is most often associated with blockchain. I love the technology itself, and that's how I got into it. So I did, I took a serendipitous path. I was, before I came here, I was I was at the company called DraftKings. I was a VP of engineering. I set up their entire blockchain infrastructure for one of their very successful product called Rainmakers. And then after that, I was with a company called Silks, and we were actually selling NFTs of racehorses born in the US. It's funny because when we did the launch, we were selling these NFTs for $1,200, and people are paying nearly $200 in transaction fees. And I was thinking, wow, this is crazy. And then I happened to bump into Shardeum, and I was looking at all the tech that behind it. And so here I am. I just love this idea of what we're doing, and we are working in a very unique space, building something very unique that I think the world hasn't seen before. And I'm very excited to bring it to everybody on May 5th when we launch.
Awesome. I had a chance to look at Shardium, and it seems like a very interesting and unique take on solving what has been a longstanding issue in the space in regards to the blockchain trilemma. I imagine that's one of the core things that you guys are aiming to tackle, right? Or what would you say is kind of your core mission, if you can encapsulate it into a little bit of a overview?
Yeah. So the core mission of Shardium is to bring decentralization to everybody in the world. To make that happen, we want to make it easier, simpler, cheaper, or less expensive to run a node and participate in the security of the network. We want to have truly global participation in our network. And so that kind of drives, the decentralization drives all the decisions we make here at Shardium. And solving the trilemma is actually one of the byproducts of that bigger mission. Because if you can only focus on two out of the three, it doesn't quite solve. It doesn't bring it to everybody, and so that's why we set out to solve the trilemma. Do you want me to sort of explain how that thing goes? Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. If you could give us like a little overview of the trilemma as well. 'Cause, some people might, it might be lost on them, the issues of security, scalability, interoperability. But yeah, in your words, how would you define it?
Yeah, yeah. So the trilemma really refers to scalability, security, and decentralization. And typically, the way it's been presented or is that you can pick two out of the three. and the minute you pick two, the third automatically is set. You can't do anything on that. So you'll see that actually I would like to start with a nice visualization, if you will. It sort of makes it easier to visualize the space, and it's not 100% accurate. I'll say that upfront, but it's a good visual aid and a thought experiment. So if you think of an EVM blockchain as sort of like a spreadsheet, right? So a spreadsheet, with rows and columns. So every row is a block, and so every cell within that row is sort of like a transaction. And the idea behind that is, if this spreadsheet is, anybody can read it, but we obviously want only one person to be able to write to that spreadsheet at any point in time. We want a single threaded write. And so most of the blockchains, they sort of they're one of the biggest differentiators is, how do you pick the person that gets to write that row into that spreadsheet? So you have all these consensus mechanisms that kind of define, okay, how do I select this one person that can write that row in the spreadsheet? um, so the what happens is that as the spreadsheet grows and you add more and more rows into it, you can have like a billion rows in that spreadsheet, and now you have, like, in every node in that network now has a copy of that billion row spreadsheet, and it keeps growing. So because you have all of that one, because every node has a copy of that, they can initially they can process it much faster, but as that thing grows, it becomes harder and harder to scale, because the number of rows keep growing, and searching becomes a problem. uh, Appending becomes a problem, storage becomes a problem, memory becomes a problem. All of that become, as you scale out, that becomes an issue, and that's why all these things get stuck on scale. So, but imagine if you could take those billion rows and sort of segment them into, say, tabs like you have on Google Sheets. So let's say you had a hundred tabs, and each tab had a subset of those rows, sort of like a phone book where you have all the names starting with A in one section, B in one section, so on and so forth. Now you have a slightly better problem, solvable problem, because now you have a subset that each node is dealing with. And and so that's, you can sort of think of it as a shard. So every tab in that sheet is like a shard. And so now the number of rows that each node has to deal with becomes smaller. You don't have to deal with the billion nodes. And so that's what Shardeum does. But now Shardeum takes it one level further and says, okay, look, there are networks that have a fixed set of tabs in that spreadsheet. But Shardeum, we want to do it. We do one step further. We say, okay, you can start with, say, 10 tabs, and as the transactions grow, as the network traffic grows, you can scale that out to 100 tabs or 1,000 tabs or 1,000,000 tabs. And when the demand or the transaction volume shrinks, we can shrink the number of tabs down to like 10, 20, 100. That is the auto scaling part that Shardeum has. And it's a very difficult problem, because we are looking at a dynamic address space that needs to be uh, immediately spread and reshared across a dynamic set of nodes that are coming in and leaving, on a irregular basis, let me say. So that's what makes Shardeum unique in that respect. Now, typically in most blockchains, when you write into the spreadsheet, you typically write one row at a time. So that's a block. You write a block into the spreadsheet. So that allows people to, because they can see the other rows that are waiting, they can do things like, for instance, they can change the order in which the cells are in present in that row. And so they have a certain amount of flexibility in how they order that uh, that row, which leads to interesting issues. And writing a row at a time also has its benefits, because you're dealing with a larger unit of data, and so you can do more. But it also has this downside where people can rearrange the columns within that row. Now in Shardeum, our native unit is not a block. Our native unit is a transaction. What that means is that we can have um, individual cells within that row can be assigned to different processes, different nodes, and each of them will settle on its own as its own transaction. Now, so take that with the auto scaling of the tabs, the ability to not just the not having to write a entire block, but being able to toggle write just an individual cell within that row makes for, now you have uh, amazing scalability, because now you can, you can have now what that means also is that because the amount of data that each node has to hold and process is much smaller than a normal EVM, the footprint that's required to run a node is much smaller. So if you look at what it takes to run a node on Shardeum, it's a very small footprint. And it's a very deliberate choice we made there, because we really want, like I said, decentralization and being accessible to people around the globe, in Africa and Asia, everywhere, is very important to us, and it's key to us. So we made the requirements for running a node much smaller. And again, so that again feeds into greater decentralization. So that's the second part of that equation. And because we have participation, I mean, if you look at our last incentivized testnet, we had 171 some thousand validated nodes, literally from running all over the globe. And actually, that's like real decentralization. We want to enable that, and everything that we do is driven by the desire to be as decentralized as possible. So the where does the security part comes in? So because our unit of we don't deal in blocks, our clock is based on a cycle, and a cycle is 60 seconds. So what we do is, at the beginning of every cycle, Shardeum selects, say, x number of nodes to participate in that cycle, and it says, okay, you know what, I'm just making these numbers up. So let's say we pick 100 of these nodes and say, okay, you are now responsible for, you're the ones who have to consent for this cycle. And we say, Brandon's node, you are responsible for tabs 23, 40, and 60. And you don't know that when your node spins up, you don't know which of those tabs you're responsible for. In fact, you don't even know if you're going to be called for active duty. So there is a 1 minute cycle, and within that cycle, nodes are picked at random. Not random, there's an algorithm that does that based on past performance, but it selects a random set of nodes that have to then consent on each transaction. And so for a transaction to be written into the blockchain, you need to have a super majority of that set of 100 nodes. You have 67 of them, they need to agree on that transaction before that's written in the blockchain. And once they consent, it's like the transaction is written, the finality is in seconds. So there's no block wait time, there's nothing like that. So that's how we solve the trilemma. We have, decentralization, we have security, and we have scalability, all rolled into that architecture.
That's fascinating. It sounds much more efficient and much cleaner than the way most L1 blockchains actually work today. Is this auto scaling something that's unique solely to Shardium right now, or has anyone else tried to do this?
As far as I know, it is. I don't think anybody else has done that, because it's not an easy problem to solve. Yes, each process has a smaller subset of data to work with, but it also greatly increases the amount of communication that has to happen between these blocks. So if you have data that's shared across shards, now we have to figure out how to resolve that. So it's a lot of work, and it's very intricate, software. And it's like, we have to be it takes a lot of expertise to build something like that. It's not an easy problem to solve.
I can imagine. I want to highlight some of these features here. You mentioned some of them, but there might be others that that I miss here, but dynamic state sharding, linear scalability, being EVM based, low fees, low latency. Anything else that you would add in there in terms of features that really comprise Shardium?
Yeah, so because of all the things that I just described, it allows us to keep our gas fee really low, because the cost of running a node is much smaller, the footprint is smaller, and the processing that a node has to do is less. And we don't reward nodes for on a transaction basis, so that way they don't get to pick and choose. There's no arbitration in, oh, I'll do that transaction because it pays me more. We don't have that. So what that means is that we only pay the rewards for a node is based on how much time they spend on active duty, so to speak. And so what that allows us to do is to have a very robust system of uh, of rewarding our participants, and at the same time securing the network, and keeping the transaction fee really small. And we can do that only because of the way we have architected the system. So
Awesome.
that's it.
Yeah, those are some great benefits to have as an L1. You guys are
Absolutely.
definitely, yeah, you guys are definitely hitting it out of the ballpark here. I want to talk about your ecosystem too. What types of use cases are you seeing being developed in Shardium's ecosystem? Are these, DeFi based applications, gaming based, file sharing, NFTs, or what do you see being kind of the most popular or most sought after use cases on Shardium thus far?
Honestly, I think all of the above, because if, like I was saying before this, in the company that we were selling, resources, we are people are paying 15%, 20% transaction fee to buy an NFT, which is, if you think of it, it's absurd. I would have killed to have a system like Shardium at that time. Now, clearly, I see DeFi as being a huge. I would love to have more DeFi applications running on Shardium, leveraging our low gas costs, our scalability, our security, all of that. Um, but to be honest, I think our community is, once we have this launched, I think our community will do a much better job than what than I can visualize. We are literally limited by just our imagination. I suspect there'll be a whole new sets of applications that will leverage Shardium's advantages, yeah, and they'll come up with apps that we haven't even thought of yet. I cannot wait for the community to jump in and exploit everything that we're building for them.
Yeah, I can imagine. That actually brings up a good point. I want to ask you about Mainnet as well. When do you think that will come out? Do you guys have a set date for it?
May 5th.
May 5th?
Launching a May. So we have been, doing dry runs of mainnet for almost a month now. We are pretty confident that everything seems to work. We have crossed all the I's, dotted all the T's, and we are launching next Monday, May 5th.
Nice. Is it going to be like a soft launch? Is it a hard launch? Or like how are you guys kind of prepping for it?
It is a hard launch, so it'll be available. We are working with all our partners to make sure that we are. I think on 5th, it's the listings will probably take a couple more days, but the launch is the mainnet TG will happen on May 5th.
Nice. Do you guys have any plans post mainnet as of yet that are kind of on the roadmap? Or are you guys still kind of just waiting to get to mainnet and see what happens?
No, we have a lot of things lined up for post mainnet. There's a we are we will be in the next upcoming weeks, we are rolling out our network in phases. So one of the things that will happen right after mainnet is we'll roll out our smart contract support, because as we are EVM based. We are hoping that that's our big push. We want to make sure that we get that rolled out as quickly as possible. We have it running in our test networks, but we are again dotting the i's, crossing the t's to make sure that that is ready for prime time. And again, we hope to see all of the network effect of the EVM ecosystem play a huge role in bringing interesting and fun dapps onto Shardeum. So the next, right after mainnet, we'll be launching full scale into full support for smart contracts and EVM, getting our community to participate more wholesomely in, uh, I have to say that our community has been super supportive. We have a huge, very passionate community that has helped us, through all this, you know, through our journey at Shardeum, and we hope that they'll continue to support us and work with us, and develop as, um, more and more interesting dapps than what we see now.
If someone wanted to work like on the back end side of this and they wanted to run a node and participate in like Shardium's network, is there a route to become a validator? Do you have documentation on that?
Absolutely. The best place for that is shardium.org. We have whole sections dedicated to how you can participate, how you can run a node. Running a node should be very, very simple. It should take less than a minute to spin one up. We are also working with partners where you can just go one click, just run a node. It'll just, and we should have that shortly on our website. But shardium.org is a good place to start.
Nice. Are there any like specific technical requirements or system requirements that you need, or can you run it on any PC or Mac, or what's kind of the baseline?
Yeah, you can. There the more detailed specs are on the, but essentially what we require is, a really small footprints machine, something that has, preferably 16 gigabytes of RAM, a 250 gig SSD drive, and a good network connection. There are You can spin one up any VM instance on any of these cloud providers. You can bring your own. You can put that on your laptop at home. Any of these are will work.
I want to ask you a high level question too, more so about the entire, blockchain space and industry. Obviously, we've come a long way over the last 10, 15 years, however long you want to extend that out. Um, and it's quite interesting how diverse the space has gotten. And it's interesting to see some of these certain issues crop up today. Obviously, Shardium is, creating a really strong solution for the trilemma issue, and allowing people to build and scale and grow applications much easier and better and more efficiently. Ethereum is plagued with L2s. Solana has tons of downtime, is unreliable at times. Everyone's also looking to migrate to Bitcoin for smart contracts and programmability. Like there's so much innovation all over the place. I'm just kind of curious how you imagine this space continuing to evolve over the next 5 years, 10 years. Are we going to still kind of be in this exploratory phase where we're looking at different directions to build? Or do you think, one solution over the other, like with what Shardium is doing, will kind of take the forefront and a lot of the ecosystem in terms of where dApps are going to be built in the future? I'm just curious, like if you thought about it, like have an opinion.
It's again, obviously I'm biased, but I think that once we release Shardium and people can see what is it that we are building and how it can make their life so much easier, leveraging all of the network effect of, you know like if you have a smart contract deployed on another EVM chain, you can just bring that over your Solidity code and run it on Shardium, and leveraging the low gas fees, the linear scalability of the network, where you don't have. So when somebody releases a meme coin, your users are stuck waiting for transactions to complete, your gas price shooting through the roof. All of that, I think, when we have Shardium running the way we intended to, I think that's going to make a big change. I think it's going to change how the industry perceives Web3 technology. I think it's going to change the kind of apps that people will build on it. I honestly believe that, meme coins and NFTs are just the low hanging fruit in this Web3 ecosystem. There is a lot more that can be done and we are hoping to leverage, we are hoping to provide the platform that allows our community to leverage that capability.
Got it. And then what else is on your guys' roadmap in terms of maybe partnerships, ecosystem projects that you are excited about? And then also, IRL stuff. Are you guys going to be at any events or conferences this year where people can maybe interact with you guys in person, or which people know?
Yeah, I think we do have it. think we have a pretty robust social presence. We are on Discord, we are on Twitter. We also have a fair presence on other media networks. Shardeum.org has links to all of these. Right now, I think we are in Dubai 2049. We were in Paris earlier on. We do go to many of these events. There is somebody from Shardeum at most of these events, anyways. We have huge participation in Asia, in Europe. Um, I think we are also in East Denver. So there's we are out there. So our users can always look us up on shardium.org and see where we hang out.
Excellent. I'll be at permissionless in June in New York and maybe a few other things in the US over the course of this year. But if you guys are around or at any events stateside, let me know. Would love to connect with you guys. Maybe we can also do an episode in person as well. I'm sure that'd be a lot of fun.
Absolutely, I would love to do that.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you taking the time today. It's been really interesting learning about what you guys are doing as an L1 in terms of auto scaling, the trilemma, what you're doing for applications and scaling. I think you guys have a really, really good, solid foundation here. So I'm excited for your guys' mainnet. Definitely let me know how that goes. And, let's set something up later this year, maybe a part two, maybe in person. Would love to see how the ecosystem is, growing and flourishing after mainnet.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I'm delighted to be on this show. Thank you.